The Galactic Academy was the most prestigious school in the universe. Only the best and strongest young warriors from different alien species were allowed to study there. It was a place where future leaders, generals, and heroes were trained. This year, something unusual happened. For the first time in history, humans were allowed to join. The other students, who came from long-lived and powerful alien species, found this decision hilarious. Humans, a species that barely lived for 100 years, a species whose bodies were small and weak compared to the giants of the galaxy. It was a joke. The Academy's training grounds were filled with whispers and laughter as the first group of human students arrived. They were shorter than most aliens, their skin smooth compared to the rough scales and thick hides of the other species. Some aliens had lived for centuries, mastering combat and strategy, while these humans had barely reached adulthood. Among the students was a reptilian warrior named Karok. He was over 300 years old and had won countless battles. He looked at the humans and smirked. "What can children teach warriors?" he said loudly. The other aliens laughed, nodding in agreement. Emily Carter, one of the human students, heard him but didn't respond. She simply smiled. Her fellow humans also remained silent. They had expected this reaction. A large insectoid alien named Psylocke, standing over 8 feet tall, grinned with his mandibles. "Let's have some fun," he said. "Let's see if the humans can even last a minute in a fight." Karok chuckled. "Yes, let's test their strength." The instructors, sensing the growing tension, decided to allow a sparring match. It was normal for new students to prove themselves, and this would be no different. The aliens expected an easy victory. A match was arranged between Emily and a 4-armed brute named Gorthak. He was twice her size, covered in thick armor-like skin, and had trained in combat for over 100 years. The aliens laughed again, convinced this would be over in seconds. Emily stepped into the ring, calm and focused. Gorthak cracked his knuckles. "Try not to cry, human," he said. The instructor gave the signal. The fight began. Gorthak charged forward, his massive fists swinging. The arena shook under his weight. He was fast for his size, but Emily was faster. She dodged with ease, moving like a shadow. Before Gorthak could react, she struck. A precise hit to his side, a twist of her body, a sharp kick to his leg. Gorthak roared in pain. The laughter around the arena stopped. Emily didn't stop moving. She weaved through his attacks, each of her strikes landing with precision. She wasn't just fast, she was efficient, using her small size as an advantage. Within seconds, Gorthak was on the ground, groaning in pain. He tried to stand but failed. Silence filled the arena. The aliens stared in disbelief. How had this small, young human defeated a warrior who had trained for a century? Emily stepped back and gave a small bow. "Thank you for the match," she said simply. The instructors watched with interest. The students who had laughed before now whispered among themselves. Maybe humanity wasn't as weak as they had thought. Karok narrowed his eyes. Something was wrong. Something was different about humans. The joke was over. And for the first time, the aliens felt a sliver of doubt. The silence in the arena was heavy. No one had expected this outcome. The towering alien warrior, Gorthak, lay on the ground, groaning in pain. The human, Emily Carter, stood calmly, barely even breathing hard. Aliens who had laughed just moments ago now whispered among themselves. How did she move so fast? She's so small, but she hit hard. Karok, the reptilian warrior who had mocked humans earlier, narrowed his eyes. He had seen thousands of fights in his long life, but this didn't make sense. The instructor stepped forward, his many eyes scanning the defeated Gorthak and the standing human. "Winner, Emily Carter." Emily nodded respectfully and stepped back, her face expressionless. Her fellow human students watched quietly, their faces unreadable. They knew this would happen. They had trained for it. Gorthak struggled to sit up, rubbing his side where Emily's precise strikes had landed. He looked up at her, his pride wounded. "What was that?" he asked, his voice full of confusion. Emily gave him a small smile. "That was a basic counterattack." Gorthak's 4 eyes widened in shock. "Basic? That wasn't basic. That was something else entirely." The aliens in the crowd were still processing what they had just seen. The idea that a human, one of the children of the galaxy, had defeated a veteran warrior in seconds was almost impossible to believe. But Karok wasn't just shocked. He was angry. "This proves nothing," he said, stepping forward. His powerful tail swayed behind him, and his scales shone under the artificial lights. "One fight means nothing. Maybe she got lucky." Emily turned her head slightly, looking at Karok. Her expression remained calm. "Do you want to test that theory?" she asked. The crowd gasped. No one had ever dared to challenge Karok so directly. He was one of the strongest warriors in the academy. Karok bared his sharp teeth in a grin. "Fine," he said. "Let's see if humans are as strong as they think." The instructor hesitated but then nodded. "Very well. A second match." Karok stepped into the ring, rolling his shoulders. Unlike Gorthak, he didn't underestimate Emily now. He had seen her speed. He had seen her precision, but he was stronger, faster, and far more experienced. Emily stood across from him, relaxed but focused. She knew this wouldn't be as easy. Karok was different. He wasn't just strong, he was smart. The instructor raised his arm. "Begin." Karok didn't charge like Gorthak had. He moved carefully, circling Emily, studying her movements. He was testing her, waiting for an opening. Emily did the same. She kept her stance light, her breathing steady. She had fought opponents like him before. She had trained for situations exactly like this. Then, Karok attacked. He was fast, far faster than Gorthak. His clawed hand slashed through the air, aiming for Emily's shoulder. She dodged, barely. His tail whipped around, almost catching her in the ribs. She twisted, avoiding the strike by inches. But Karok wasn't done. He moved with terrifying speed, keeping up the pressure. Emily ducked, dodged, and deflected as best as she could. But she knew she couldn't keep this up forever. Then she saw it. A pattern. Karok was fast, but he was predictable. His attacks followed a rhythm. Strike, tail whip, follow-up slash. Emily smiled. Karok attacked again, his claw aiming for her throat. But this time, Emily moved before he even finished the motion. She sidestepped, twisted her body, and struck. A sharp jab to his side. A quick pivot. A powerful kick to the back of his knee. Karok stumbled. Emily didn't stop. She pressed forward, using his moment of imbalance against him. A strike to his jaw. A sweep of his legs. Karok hit the ground hard. Silence. The crowd couldn't believe it. Karok, the great warrior, the one who had laughed at humanity, was lying on his back, looking up at the human who had just defeated him. Emily stepped back, giving him space to stand. "You're strong," she said simply, "but you rely too much on patterns." Karok's chest rose and fell as he caught his breath. He had never felt this kind of humiliation before, but more than that, he felt something he hadn't expected. Respect. He pushed himself up slowly, his piercing eyes locking onto Emily's. Then, to the shock of everyone, he nodded. "You are not weak," he admitted. Emily smiled. "I know." The crowd erupted. Some aliens cheered, others argued, and the instructors exchanged knowing glances. The academy had welcomed humans as a joke. But now, the joke was over. And the galaxy was beginning to realize the truth. Karok sat on the bench, his breathing still heavy from the fight. His pride was bruised, but his mind was racing. How had he lost? How had a human, a species that barely lived for 100 years, managed to defeat a warrior with 3 centuries of experience? Across the training hall, Emily stood with her fellow human students, discussing their next lessons as if nothing had happened. They weren't bragging. They weren't celebrating. It was as if defeating Karak was just normal. Karak clenched his fists. He had to understand. The news spread fast. The first human students had arrived, and they had already proven themselves in combat. The Academy's instructors took notice. The other alien students, once amused by humanity's presence, now watched them with curiosity and a bit of unease. In the great halls of the Academy, the instructors gathered to discuss the unexpected turn of events. A towering cephalopod-like alien, Professor Xeldzor, tapped his tentacles against a glowing data screen. "It appears we may have underestimated our new students," he said, his voice calm but thoughtful. The others murmured in agreement. A mechanical being, shaped like a floating sphere covered in blinking lights, analyzed the combat footage. Its synthetic voice buzzed through the chamber. Humans display advanced combat adaptation. Despite their limited lifespan, they react and learn at an accelerated rate. Further study is required. The council agreed. If humans were this capable at their age, what would they become with proper training? A research study was ordered. The Academy scientists and war analysts turned their attention to human biology, history, and military tactics. They needed to understand the weak species that had just shaken their strongest warriors. And what they found was disturbing. The first discovery was the most obvious. Humans were fast learners. Most species in the galaxy lived for centuries, some even for thousands of years. Their growth was slow, their progress steady. But humans? They were different. Their lives were short, but their minds worked at an unmatched speed. A reptilian scholar compared notes with an insectoid scientist. In just a few years, they reach a level of skill that takes us decades, the reptilian said, his voice filled with disbelief. The insectoid clicked its mandibles. They must adapt quickly or perish. Their planet's environment is harsh, their history filled with endless wars and struggles. The second discovery was even more shocking. Humans were built for endurance. Most alien species relied on bursts of power, using energy in short, controlled fights. Humans, however, had something called persistence hunting, an ability to chase prey for hours, even days, without stopping. Their bodies were designed to recover quickly, their muscles resistant to fatigue. The war analysts were stunned. "If humans ever go to war with us," a high-ranking general whispered, "they won't stop. They will keep fighting long after we have tired." And then came the final, most terrifying realization. Humans weren't just physically capable. They were unpredictable. Most species in the galaxy had structured ways of thinking. Their battle strategies followed tradition, logic, and patterns that had existed for centuries. But humans, they were chaotic. They improvised. They adapted in real time. The scientist who studied Emily's fight against Karak presented his findings to the Academy leaders. "She didn't just react," he explained. "She studied Karak's movements and adjusted her strategy mid-fight. She found a pattern and broke it. No warrior in this academy, no matter how old, is trained to deal with that kind of unpredictability." The room fell silent. One instructor, a veteran of galactic wars, leaned back in his chair. His eyes were filled with something rare. "Fear. If humanity ever decides to conquer the stars," he said slowly, "nothing will stop them." Karak sat in the Academy's grand library, scrolling through human history. Wars, inventions, revolutions, it was endless. Humanity had been fighting, creating, and advancing at an unnatural speed for thousands of years. They weren't weak. They weren't young. They were hungry. A shiver ran down Karak's spine. He had once laughed at them. Now, for the first time in his life, he felt small. Meanwhile, Emily and her fellow humans continued training, unaware of the growing fear among the Academy staff. The aliens had laughed before, but they weren't laughing anymore. The Academy had changed. Where once the halls echoed with the laughter of aliens mocking humanity, now there was silence. where once the other students dismissed humans as weak, now they watched them with quiet unease. Kerouac felt the shift more than anyone. He had been among those who laughed. He had been among those who believed humanity was a joke. But now he couldn't shake the feeling that the joke had been on them. Word of humanity's victory spread beyond the academy. Across the galaxy, powerful factions took notice. Some saw potential, others saw a threat, and some wanted to test humanity further. The Academy's High Council received an urgent message from the Vorak Dominion, a species known for their brutal combat traditions. "We have heard of your new students." The message read, "We wish to see if they are worthy." It was an invitation, or rather, a challenge. The Vorak had proposed a combat simulation, an ancient test designed to push warriors to their absolute limit. It wasn't just a normal training exercise. It was survival. A real battlefield. A real war scenario. No safety measures. No mercy. Many alien students, including Kerouac, had gone through similar trials before. But for humans, it was too soon. They hadn't been in the academy long enough. They shouldn't have been ready. And yet, the humans accepted. The training ground was transformed. Towering walls, dense jungles, ruined buildings, everything was designed to mimic a true battlefield. Hidden within the environment were deadly war machines, robotic enemies, and unpredictable hazards. The rules were simple: survive and complete the mission. 3 teams were formed. 2 teams of experienced alien warriors. 1 team of humans. As the countdown began, Kerouac stood with his team, watching the humans from a distance. Emily Carter and her squad looked calm, focused. There was no fear in their eyes. "They have no idea what they're walking into," one of Kerouac's teammates muttered. Kerouac wasn't so sure anymore. Then, the signal flared. The test had begun. The first minutes were pure madness. Explosions rocked the battlefield. Enemy drones unleashed suppressing fire. The environment shifted unpredictably. Walls collapsed, traps activated. The battlefield changed without warning. The Vorak had designed this test to break warriors. The alien teams moved with discipline, sticking to formation, advancing with caution. The humans, they vanished. Kerouac's team expected them to be wiped out quickly. But after 10 minutes, something strange happened. The enemy drones, designed to attack anything that moved, were being redirected. Something was interfering with their systems. Kerouac frowned. That's not possible. Then the ambush happened. Out of nowhere, 3 alien teams came under attack. Not from the drones, not from the traps, from the humans. Emily's team had gone dark, avoided direct confrontation, studied the enemy, and struck at the perfect moment. They didn't just fight the simulation, they hacked it. They reprogrammed drones to attack enemy squads. They used traps against their creators. They moved in unpredictable patterns, striking hard, and then disappearing into the battlefield like ghosts. Kerouac's team, once confident, was now on the defensive. "This isn't a battle," one of his teammates growled. "This is hunting." By the end of the simulation, the battlefield was nearly silent. The Vorak overseers, watching from a control room, were stunned. The aliens, veterans of the academy, were scattered, confused, forced to retreat. And the humans, they had completed the mission twice as fast as expected. Kerouac sat on the ground, breathing heavily. His squad had barely made it out. The humans stood nearby, unharmed, their uniforms barely dirty. Emily looked at him and smiled. "You okay?" Kerouac didn't answer. He simply stared at her, his mind racing. This wasn't normal. This wasn't supposed to happen. For the first time, Kerouac understood. Humanity wasn't just strong. They were unstoppable. The results of the test spread quickly. Leaders of various factions reviewed the footage, and reactions were mixed. Some saw potential allies. Others saw a growing threat. One thing was clear: humanity had passed the test. And now, the galaxy knew the truth. The humans were no longer just students. They were a force to be reckoned with. The results of the combat simulation shook the Academy to its core. Humanity had not just passed the test, they had shattered every expectation. The Vorax challenge had been designed to break new warriors, to push them to the brink of failure. Yet the humans had adapted, survived, and won. Now, the Academy was divided. Some instructors were impressed. They saw potential in humanity, a species that could become one of the greatest warriors in the galaxy. But others were terrified. In the Academy's command chamber, the High Council of Instructors gathered. Holographic projections played footage of the humans during the simulation, outmaneuvering, outthinking, and overwhelming their opponents. Professor Zeldzor, the cephalopod scholar, folded his tentacles. "This is unprecedented," he murmured. "No species has ever demonstrated this level of adaptability so quickly." General Tavor, a battle-hardened war leader, leaned forward, his insectoid mandibles clicking in thought. "They think differently," he said. "They don't follow patterns. They create them. And then, when the enemy catches on, they break them." A heavy silence filled the room. An avian strategist, her feathers ruffling in unease, tapped her clawed fingers on the table. "This is dangerous." Zeldzor turned to her. "Dangerous?" "Yes," she said firmly. "We have lived in relative balance for centuries. Our wars follow rules, traditions. Humanity does not follow rules. They rewrite them." She gestured toward the footage. "If they can do this as students, what will they become in a decade? A century?" Tavor's mandibles twitched. "You speak as if they are a threat." The avian gave him a sharp look. "Are they not?" No one had an answer. Because deep down, they all had the same question. What happens when humanity is no longer the underdog? Karak couldn't sleep. The battle replayed in his mind. The way the humans had disappeared into the battlefield. The way they had turned the enemy's own weapons against them. And the way they had looked at the end. They weren't just proud of their victory. They had expected it. Karak had trained for over 300 years to become the warrior he was today. But Emily Carter, she had barely lived for 2 decades. And she had defeated him. What would she become in 50 years? 100. The thought made his scales crawl. He wasn't sure if it was fear or respect. Maybe both. For a few days, the Academy was quiet. Too quiet. The other alien students avoided the humans, unsure of how to approach them now. The humans, as always, simply continued training, unfazed by the shift in attitude. Then, the first attack happened. It was during a routine sparring session. Emily and another human, Daniel Hayes, were practicing hand-to-hand combat in the training hall when a group of older alien students approached. One of them, a massive armored warrior from a species known as the Dravlok, stepped forward. His deep voice rumbled. "You think you're better than us?" Emily raised an eyebrow. "No," she said simply. "We think we're good. There's a difference." The Dravlok's 4 eyes burned with fury. "Then prove it." Before Emily could respond, he attacked. The fight was brutal. The Dravlok was strong, faster than most would expect for his size. But Emily had fought larger opponents before. She moved, dodging his strikes, landing sharp counterattacks. But this wasn't like the controlled fights in the simulations. This was different. The Dravlok wasn't just testing her. He was trying to hurt her. The other human, Daniel, saw it too. And when the Dravlok grabbed Emily by the throat, squeezing, Daniel reacted. Fast. Too fast. In a blink, he closed the distance and struck the Dravlok in a way no one expected. A pressure point. A perfect strike. The massive warrior collapsed, gasping for air, his body temporarily paralyzed. The training hall fell into stunned silence. Emily rubbed her throat, coughed, and looked at Daniel. That was unnecessary. Daniel shrugged. He wasn't stopping. The instructors arrived seconds later. The Dravlock was taken to the medical bay. Daniel was questioned, but in the end, it was ruled as self-defense. But the message was clear. The aliens weren't just wary of humans anymore. They were afraid. News of the fight spread beyond the academy. On different worlds, leaders and military strategists reviewed the reports. Some saw an opportunity. Humanity would make powerful allies. Others, however, whispered a different thought. If they are this strong now, what will they become later? In the shadows, discussions began. Plans were made. And for the first time, humanity's place in the academy was at risk. They had proven themselves, and that made them dangerous. The academy was no longer the same. Where humans had once been a joke, now they were a problem. Where aliens had once mocked them, now they whispered in hushed voices. And where there had once been uneasy curiosity, now there was something far more dangerous. Fear. But fear does not always lead to respect. Sometimes it leads to something darker. And in the shadows of the academy, plans were being made. Deep within the academy's restricted sector, a meeting took place. The room was dark, illuminated only by the glowing displays of security feeds and tactical reports. Seated around a long table were representatives from multiple species, elders, generals, instructors, and politicians. At the head of the table sat High Chancellor Vorsk, a veteran leader from the Solari Dominion, a faction that had ruled parts of the galaxy for millennia. He was old, powerful, and most importantly, concerned. Humanity has proven itself, Vorsk said, his voice calm but firm. And that is the problem. A reptilian warlord from the Juvik coalition hissed in agreement. They should not be this strong. It makes no sense. A Vorik strategist, one of those who had designed the combat simulation, leaned forward. Their abilities are unnatural. We thought they were children among the stars, but they fight like seasoned warriors. They think too fast. They improvise too well. The avian military leader who had warned of humanity before clicked her beak. And if they continue to grow, what then? A silence fell over the room. Finally, Vorsk spoke. Then we must make sure they do not. The decision was made. The humans would not be allowed to rise any further, and they would not see the attack coming. The next day, the humans were summoned for a special training mission. Emily Carter, Daniel Hayes, and the rest of the human squad were called to the Academy's central briefing room. Waiting for them was Instructor Droll, a high-ranking officer with years of combat experience. His expression was unreadable as he gave them their orders. A special combat exercise has been arranged, Droll explained. You will be sent to an off-world training facility. There you will engage in a war simulation against high-level opponents. Emily frowned. Something felt wrong. Daniel exchanged a glance with her. They had trained under Droll before. He was strict but fair. Today, though, there was something different in his tone. Emily folded her arms. Why just us? Droll met her gaze without flinching. Because you've proven yourselves. This is a test to see if you can handle real galactic warfare. It was a lie. But the humans didn't know that yet. And so, without suspecting the truth, they accepted the mission. The transport ship carrying the human squad left the academy and entered deep space, heading toward the designated training facility. But they never arrived. Halfway through the journey, the ship's systems shut down. The lights flickered. Alarms blared. Then, the airlocks opened. Without warning, a team of elite alien operatives stormed in, weapons drawn. Emily and her team reacted instantly, diving for cover. But something was wrong. This wasn't a simulation. The attackers were using live ammunition. It was an assassination attempt. Daniel barely dodged a plasma bolt that seared past his head. This isn't a training mission, he shouted. Emily gritted her teeth, her mind racing. The academy had set them up. This was a trap. But if they thought humanity would die quietly, they had made a mistake. The alien operatives were well trained, but they had underestimated their targets. The humans moved fast, working as a unit. Emily led the charge, taking down an enemy soldier with a precise strike to the throat. Daniel grabbed a fallen weapon and fired back, his shots deadly accurate. Within seconds, the once one-sided ambush turned into a full-blown counterattack. The aliens panicked. "They're adapting too fast," one of them shouted. Another operative, a reptilian sniper, tried to retreat, but before he could, a human grabbed his weapon, flipped it, and fired in one smooth motion. The human squad fought like survivors, like hunters, like predators, and within minutes, the attackers were dead. The transport ship drifted in space, the battle over, but the danger far from gone. Emily checked the ship's controls. They had been locked out. There was no way back to the academy. "We're stranded," one of the humans muttered. Daniel clenched his fists. "No, we've been exiled." Emily's eyes burned with quiet fury. The academy had sent them here to die. The leaders of the galaxy have decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to grow. They had tried to end the problem before it began, but they had failed. And now humanity knew the truth. They weren't just fighting for respect anymore. They were fighting for survival. And one thing was certain. The galaxy had just made its greatest mistake. The galaxy had made its decision. The Academy, the High Council, the warlords and strategists, they had all conspired against humanity. They had feared Earth's children, feared their strength, their adaptability, their potential. So, they had tried to erase them, but they had failed. And now, for the first time, humanity was not just fighting for recognition. They were fighting for revenge. The transport ship drifted through space, its systems locked, its distress signals jammed. The humans, Emily Carter, Daniel Hayes, and the rest of their squad, stood in the wreckage of the failed ambush. The alien assassins sent to kill them lay dead. Daniel was breathing heavily, his hand still gripping the stolen plasma rifle. "They tried to bury us." Emily wiped the blood from her face. "They should have made sure we were dead." The squad worked quickly. The ship's navigation had been remotely disabled, but it didn't matter. They were humans. They were used to broken things. Fixing them was second nature. Within minutes, they cracked the system, rerouting controls and scanning for nearby locations. A single outpost flickered on the map, a remote supply depot used by the Academy's military forces. Emily smiled coldly. "That'll do." They set course. The galaxy wanted humanity gone. Instead, it had created a ghost that was about to haunt them all. The supply depot sat on a barren moon, guarded by an elite force. Heavily armored soldiers patrolled the perimeter, drones hovered in the air, and automated turrets lined the walls. The humans should have been outmatched. They weren't. The attack came at night. Emily and her team moved like shadows, disabling security, cutting power, disrupting communications. One by one, the guards fell, unaware of their attackers until it was too late. By the time the alarms blared, it was over. Inside the depot, the humans found what they needed: weapons, armor, encrypted data logs. And something else. A message. A secret transmission from the Academy's leadership, confirming their betrayal. Daniel played the recording aloud. The humans must not be allowed to continue. They are too dangerous. The humans didn't just take weapons. They took information. Using the outpost's long-range communications array, they hijacked one of the Academy's secure channels and broadcast the message across the entire galactic network. The betrayal of humanity was no longer a secret. Leaders of alien factions, warlords, independent colonies, they all saw it, and many of them didn't like what they saw. The Academy's credibility crumbled overnight. Some species, those who had never trusted the Council, turned against them. Others hesitated, wondering if they had made the wrong choice. And a few saw something else. An opportunity. For the first time, factions beyond the Academy began reaching out to humanity. Not as enemies, as potential allies. Back at the academy, chaos erupted. The High Council scrambled to contain the fallout. Some denied the accusations, calling the broadcast a lie. Others demanded the humans be silenced before they gained more power. But it was too late. The galaxy had seen the truth, and more importantly, the humans knew who their enemies were now. Karok, the reptilian warrior who had once doubted them, watched the news unfold. He had trained with the humans, fought against them, learned their terrifying strength firsthand. And now he wondered if he had chosen the wrong side. The Academy made its next move quickly. A fleet of warships was dispatched to hunt down the humans, to erase them before they could gain more support. But the humans were not running anymore. They were preparing. With stolen supplies, new allies, and the element of surprise, they set a trap. When the Academy's fleet arrived, expecting an easy victory, they found something else instead. A battlefield where the humans had already won. They didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like survivors. They fought like predators. The Academy had feared what humanity could become. Now, they were about to find out. And for the first time in history, the galaxy was afraid of them. As the war began, as the Academy's forces crumbled, as alliances shifted, and the balance of power changed forever, one final message echoed across the stars. A message from Emily Carter herself, broadcast to every species, every faction, every leader who had doubted them. You called us weak. You laughed at our youth. You thought we were a joke. She leaned forward, eyes burning. You're not laughing anymore. End them before it's too late. Emily's jaw tightened. The Academy had turned on them, but now they had proof, and they were going to use it.